Good evening, I'm Nova Blake, and this is your complete political briefing for Tuesday, April 7th, 2026. Today, the United States military pulls off one of the most daring rescue operations in its history, recovering a seriously wounded Air Force colonel from deep inside the mountains of Iran, as President Trump issues a final Tuesday deadline for Tehran to open the Strait of Hormuz or face strikes on power plants and bridges. Let's get into it. Starting with the top stories from across the American political landscape. The United States military has rescued the second crew member of the F-15E Strike Eagle, shot down over Iran Friday, a weapons systems officer holding the rank of colonel, after he survived alone in the enemy's mountains for more than 24 hours. The colonel, who sustained injuries including a sprained ankle, hid in a crevice along a 7,000-foot ridgeline and used an emergency beacon to signal his location while hundreds of Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps soldiers searched for him. The CIA launched a deception campaign within Iran to mislead Iranian forces, and the rescue operation ultimately involved hundreds of Special Forces troops, Delta Force, Navy SEAL Team 6, and 155 aircraft, with President Trump announcing the successful rescue on Truth Social early Sunday, calling it one of the most daring operations in United States military history. President Trump issued a final, unambiguous ultimatum to Iran on Easter Sunday, declaring that Tuesday, at 8 in the evening Eastern Time, is Iran's last chance to open the Strait of Hormuz or reach a peace agreement before a new wave of American strikes. Writing in a profanity-laced Truth Social post, Trump threatened that Tuesday would be, in his words, power plant day and bridge day for Iran. He later clarified in a follow-up post that 8 p.m. Eastern Tuesday was the final deadline, while separately telling reporters Sunday he believed there was a good chance of a deal by Monday. Iran has rejected a temporary ceasefire proposal presented through Pakistani mediators, demanding instead a complete and immediate end to all fighting across the region, along with safe passage protocols for the Strait of Hormuz. Iran's foreign ministry confirmed Sunday that Tehran had transmitted its own 10-point counter-proposal through intermediaries, calling for a full end to strikes, war reparations, and Iranian sovereignty over the strait. Mediators from Pakistan, Egypt, and Turkey are working frantically to close the gap between the two sides ahead of the Tuesday evening deadline, with one source describing the gaps as very significant. Pope Leo XIV used his first Easter Sunday address from St. Peter's Square to deliver a sweeping call for peace, declaring that those who have weapons should lay them down, and those with the power to unleash wars must choose peace instead. The American-born Pope, speaking before more than 50,000 faithful at the Vatican, warned that the world is growing accustomed to violence and becoming indifferent to the deaths of thousands. His remarks landed on the same morning that President Trump published his expletive-laden social media threat against Iran, creating a stark and widely noted global contrast between the two highest-profile Americans on the world stage. President Trump is said to be mulling a broader cabinet reshuffle in the coming weeks, following his dismissal of Attorney General Pam Bondi and the earlier firing of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem. 5 people familiar with internal White House discussions told reporters that Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick and Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard are among those viewed as potentially vulnerable. The White House has publicly denied any planned departures, saying the president retains total confidence in his cabinet, though observers noted that the White House issued similar reassurances about Bondi just before her removal. The Department of Homeland Security shutdown entered its 50th day this weekend, with no congressional resolution in sight, and both chambers of Congress still on Easter recess. President Trump signed a presidential memorandum Friday, directing the DHS to pay more than 35,000 employees at agencies including the Federal Emergency Management Agency, the Coast Guard, and the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA, who have gone without paychecks since February 14th. Legal experts raised questions about whether the administration had the authority to unilaterally spend funds that Congress has not appropriated. Momentum in Congress to force a war powers vote on Iran continues to build. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries said Democrats are determined to win the next floor vote when Congress returns the week of April 13th, and a number of Democrats who previously backed the administration's initial Iran strikes have now announced they will switch sides on any upcoming war powers resolution. The shifting votes reflect rising concern among members over gas prices now above $4 per gallon, the loss of American aircraft, and the administration's inability to articulate a clear endgame. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu publicly congratulated President Trump for what he called the perfectly executed American rescue mission in Iran, saying he was proud that Israeli intelligence had contributed to locating the missing airmen. Netanyahu's statement confirmed that Israel played an active role in supporting the search and rescue operation, which also prompted Israel to temporarily pause its own strikes on Iran during the mission to avoid interfering with American rescue aircraft. The operation is being described as one of the most complex combat search and rescue missions in modern military history. Reports swirling in Washington this weekend suggest that the next round of potential departures from the Trump administration could include Labor Secretary Lori Chavez-DeRemer and FBI Director Kash Patel, in addition to Commerce Secretary Lutnick and Director of National Intelligence Gabbard. All four have faced public controversies: Lutnick over his connections to Jeffrey Epstein's files, Chavez-DeRemer over misconduct allegations involving her husband at the Labor Department, and Gabbard over her long-stated opposition to regime change wars and her recent congressional testimony on Iran. Trump told reporters Sunday not to expect a cabinet shakeup, but his administration has publicly denied similar rumors in the past, including about Bondi, just before acting on them. A federal judge on Saturday blocked the Trump administration's demand for sensitive student data from universities, ruling that the rollout was rushed and chaotic. The judge found the administration had not followed proper legal procedures before demanding that universities hand over personal data on international students as part of a broader effort to scrutinize foreign nationals on campus. The ruling is the latest in a series of federal court setbacks the administration has faced this week, adding to a growing list of judicial losses over immigration enforcement, election executive orders, and the White House ballroom construction project. Now turning to Washington and the latest actions from the current administration. Here are 10 significant developments from the administration this week. President Trump signed a presidential memorandum Friday directing the Department of Homeland Security to immediately pay all of its employees affected by the 50-day partial government shutdown, bypassing Congress and ordering back pay for more than 35,000 workers. The memo covered Coast Guard civilians, FEMA employees, and cybersecurity professionals at CISA who have been working without paychecks since February 14th. Trump titled the memo, "Liberating the Department of Homeland Security from the Democrat-Caused Shutdown." The Trump administration's Tuesday deadline for Iran to open the Strait of Hormuz represents the culmination of a series of extended ultimatums that began in late March. Trump has now twice extended the original deadline, first from a 10-day window set on March 21st, then to April 6th, and now to Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern, each time citing what he described as ongoing progress in negotiations through Pakistani, Egyptian, and Turkish mediators. Iran has publicly rejected every extension as a stalling tactic and denied that its leadership has requested any ceasefire. The Central Intelligence Agency played a central operational role in the rescue of the downed American colonel inside Iran, running a deception campaign to mislead Iranian forces about the airman's location before special forces moved in for extraction. Army Delta Force and Navy SEAL Team 6 were directly involved in the mission alongside a massive air support umbrella of 155 aircraft. 2 C-130 Hercules transport aircraft were intentionally destroyed by American forces to prevent sensitive equipment from falling into Iranian hands, along with 4 special operations helicopters. Israel confirmed that it had paused its own airstrikes on Iranian targets during the American rescue operation to ensure that its aircraft did not interfere with United States military rescue missions over Iranian territory. The pause represented a rare public acknowledgement of operational military coordination between the two allies in real time during active combat. Israeli intelligence also contributed to locating the downed airmen before the rescue mission was launched. According to Israeli officials, the Trump administration is facing a Tuesday deadline of its own making, one which Iran has called a bluff, and diplomats from allied nations are scrambling to address before it expires. U.S. allies, according to multiple reports, are pressing behind the scenes for a last-minute deal structure that would involve a 45-day ceasefire, with negotiations on a permanent end to the conflict to follow. One framework circulated through Pakistan called for both sides to commit to a memorandum of understanding finalized electronically before the Tuesday cutoff. But as of Sunday evening, no agreement had been reached. The White House confirmed Sunday that gas prices nationally reached $4.10 per gallon, a level not seen nationally since 2022, driven almost entirely by the closure of the Strait of Hormuz since the war began on February 28th. The price spike is having cascading effects on inflation, transportation costs, and agricultural supply chains. The International Energy Agency has called the closure the largest disruption to global energy supplies since the oil crisis of the 1970s. President Trump signed his fiscal year 2027 budget proposal into public release Friday, requesting $1.5 trillion in defense spending, a 42% increase over current levels and the largest Pentagon budget in modern American history. The White House says the proposal is structured so that $1.1 trillion would flow through regular congressional appropriations, while $350 billion would be pursued through budget reconciliation, which requires only a simple majority in the Senate and no Democratic votes. The budget simultaneously proposes $73 billion in cuts to domestic programs. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth blocked or delayed promotions for more than a dozen Black and female senior officers across all 4 branches of the military, according to 9 United States officials familiar with the process. The officials said the officers appeared to have been targeted because of their race, gender, or perceived affiliation with Biden administration policies or officials. The revelations add to congressional scrutiny of Hegseth's personnel practices at the Pentagon following his forced retirement of Army Chief of Staff General Randy George and 2 other generals last week. President Trump signed an executive order on college athletics Friday, directing federal agencies to withhold grants and federal contracts from universities that violate governing body rules on athlete transfers, eligibility, and compensation. The order calls for establishing a 5-year maximum eligibility window for college athletes and caps undergraduate transfers at 1 without a waiting period. The order takes effect August 1, 2026, and legal experts widely expect lawsuits from athletes and advocacy groups challenging its provisions. The Justice Department's Office of Legal Counsel issued a formal opinion this week, concluding that the 1978 Presidential Records Act is unconstitutional, arguing that presidents cannot be compelled to hand over their official papers to the National Archives at the end of their term. The opinion, which does not carry the force of law, was authored by Assistant Attorney General T. Elliott Geiser and argues that historical practice of voluntary accommodation between the branches is all that is legally required. Legal scholars from both political parties have disputed the opinion's conclusions, and Congress is expected to challenge it formally after returning from recess. That's your full briefing for Tuesday, April 7th, 2026. I'm Nova Blake. Stay informed, stay ahead. We'll see you next time.